Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about how to make short field landings and why it is important to be proficient. You want to go to a fly-in or you want to go to a camping trip in the backcountry, and you need to know that you can make this trip. Let's say this trip is 1200 feet, and if you know you can stop in 800 feet consistently, it will be fine. These are techniques that work for me. I'm not an instructor. First, let's see some short field landings. Something to take into account: bush tires and wet grass don't mix. You just slide and don't get any braking power. This is a farmer field in Washington. Gravel bar in Stillaguamish River, Washington. You get good braking power on gravel bars, but using too much brake will kick up rocks and can cause dents on the horizontal stud. Lower Loon in Idaho. High density altitude will increase your ground speed, so this is something to take into account when going to high altitude places. Stillaguamish River in Washington. Only way to do this kind of short landing in a 182 is by having a very lightweight airplane. So in late spring, most of the state airports open. You get invited to fly-ins and or landing strips or pre-planned trips to Idaho. And if you're not proficient in short field landings, it can become dangerous. Dreams of Fields in Washington. It was a fly-in. It's kind of a short trip. This pilot approaches a bit too fast. Has to do a go around. Another fast approach. They lower the nose, gain speed, bounces, but the pilot makes it. Here is an example of a proficient pilot and how he can do it in a Mooney. Slips in at the right speed and no problem for him. If you're planning to go to fly-ins or any kind of short field, it is very important to be proficient doing short field landings, or else it can be very scary and dangerous. You cannot just go and hope for the best. The technique I use for short field landings on the tailwheel airplane is the same as with the 182. Only difference is that on a tailwheel airplane, when the rocks are too big, I try to lift the tail. The two airplanes in the last video that came too fast, they were lowering the nose right at the end of the approach, so they gained speed. If you will see in these videos, all my approaches are with a nose high and with throttle. The reason you see a nose high approach on my airplane is because I'm managing speed with pitch and altitude with throttle. One very important aspect, many times overlooked, is the CG. If you want to go to a short field and get the best performance of your airplane, try to load the CG towards the aft position. That way the stall speed is slower. Also, the nose of the airplane will feel lighter in the stick or in the yoke. But it is important to check with the POH and make sure you are within the CG limits. Here you can see how I'm using the yoke to control the speed. I'm pulling back and I continue with throttle. I compensate with throttle to keep the altitude and keep controlling the speed with the yoke, and add power just before touchdown, so I try to smooth the touchdown. This is the same landing looking from the outside. You can see my approach and hear the motor, the corrections I do with the throttle. I'm controlling the descent rate and aiming for the touchdown zone with throttle. And I'm keeping the speed slow with the yoke, pitching up, pulling on the yoke a little bit so the nose doesn't come down and then I gain too much speed. The best way to get a feel for the airplane at slow speeds and to practice all of these techniques is by practicing lots of slow flight in all configurations. You put a power setting, you see the RPMs, and you make sure that the vertical speed indicator is at 0, so it's not climbing or descending. And I practice a lot of this and fly a long time this way, so I get used to the feeling of the airplane at very slow speeds. This exercise will give you a lot more confidence when approaching slow to a short field. Takes a lot of patience and a lot of practice. Another good exercise is to practice stalls and see how in all configurations. Many pilots never do a stall after they get their private certificate, so if you do that you will never get to know the airplane well. Here is a 205 doing a short field landing. You can hear the motor, he's coming with power and then sinks a bit, but then at the end a little bit more power and smooth landing. Flying in the back country can be unforgiving. For example, this kind of landing in Wilson Bar, you cannot float and land too long because there is no go around and you will end up in the trees, so it is pretty dangerous to go to these places not being proficient with the airplane. Here I'm landing at Cougar Ranch in Idaho, and you see the approach. You will see that I'm controlling my speed with the yoke and the descent rate with throttle. I try to slow down the airplane way in advance, so I have plenty of time for minor corrections. Also, I like to land with the trim all the way back so the nose feels lighter. This is in the 182. Every plane is different. I know it's more difficult for a go around, but many of these airstrips has no go around anyway. Now we'll show you a view from the outside on the same approach. For example, this is not a super technical or difficult strip, but you cannot get sloppy or come too fast, so you need to be precise all the time. Many of these airstrips has trees at the end or a mountain and no go around, so it can be very unforgiving. Short final, coming real slow. The angle of attack indicator is of great help, and it's showing me how much lift I got. Angle of attack indicator teaches you to fly the wing. You forget about chasing numbers, airspeed indicator and all that. It is a lot more precise. I use the Alpha Systems angle of attack indicator. I sold so many of these angle of attack indicators I became a dealer, so if anybody is interested in one, send me an email and I can give you a discount. Outside view, you can see that I touched down at the beginning of the strip, so I have plenty of room left for stopping. I always recommend to aim for the beginning of the strip. What about when it is windy? I do not fly to these places when it's windy. I I don't think it's fun and it's pretty dangerous, so I only fly on these places when it's calm winds. If it's Idaho, I go early in the morning, and if it's around Washington, I wait for nice days. I have no problem to go to land to a big airport with wind, but for the backcountry in the mountains and with the big trees, it can get really dangerous. This strip is Bandera in Washington. It has big trees at both ends, but the strip is pretty long. This is another state airport in Washington. This is Skycomish. It has big trees at both ends. Try to come slow over the trees. If it was windy and I really need to come here, I will come very high and aim for the middle of the strip. If it's very windy, I'll probably be able to stop very short with plenty of room left. Once I pass the trees, I put power and the sync rate increases, and just before touchdown I give a little bit of power to rest the sync rate. Here we're landing at the snow-covered airstrip. It feels very smooth when landing in snow, but then coming in slow, 3 point. Sometimes there is no room for a long final, so you have to make the turn with more speed and then reduce speed and set up for the landing. Flying should be humbling, especially flying over people. I think humility and teachability should be the top traits of a pilot. Understand risk and how to manage it. Know your limitations and plan accordingly, and always be learning. Base to final, so it looks like I'm going fast, and see how I will slow down the airplane for the landing. This is an established approach into Cougar Ranch in Idaho. I'm showing the wing because you will see that it doesn't change much. You will hear the motor. I'm changing power settings, but the wing does not change the attitude. This is why the angle of attack indicator is so great, because it teaches you how to fly the wing. It changes your mindset. You're flying the wing and you are constantly thinking about the wing instead of the airspeed indicator when flying. Hope you guys enjoy, and if you want to have more discussion or questions, please join me on Patreon. I will be happy to help you, and you will be supporting Backcountry 182 YouTube channel. It is very easy to join, to be a patron of Backcountry 182. Go to the YouTube channel. On the right hand side there is the link, and then it takes you to the Patreon page. Here you can see all the tiers and what is all about the support for Backcountry 182 YouTube channel. Also, another way to access the Patreon link is in the description of the video I put in YouTube on Backcountry 182 channel. There is a link for Patreon, so just click on that and it will take you to the page. Thank you for watching. It would be amazing if you guys are interested and give some support.